Today we're finally going to be reviewing the long anticipated Labs 006. This is an incredible paddle. I have tons to say about it. We're going to make this an in-depth review with a bunch of comparisons, specs, you name it. So let's hop right into it. Alright, first let's talk about specs. The price of this paddle is $333. You can use promo code ADV-Davis Pickleball to get a free $40 digital gift card. The Lab 006 is a 16mm thick polypropylene core paddle. It has a handle length of 5.75 inches and a grip circumference of 4.25 inches. The paddle face is a Toray T700 carbon fiber. The weight range of this paddle comes in between 8.3 to 8.7 ounces. So right out of the box, I immediately noticed the heaviness of the paddle. My quality assurance card actually said that my paddle was 8.7 ounces, which I thought was pretty wild since most of the paddles I've played with are generally around 8 ounces before I lead take them. The surface texture feels extremely gritty, so I anticipated this paddle to have tons of spin potential. In my playtesting and games that I played with this paddle, I immediately noticed that I was able to hit the ball way harder than my SLK Halo. I mean, the ball was flinging off my paddle face as soon as I hit it with crazy amounts of spin. I wouldn't consider myself a banger, but in the first few games playing with this paddle, all I wanted to do was drive because it felt that good. Not surprisingly, I did find it taking a bit of an adjustment to the soft game. In my drops and dinks, I really had to be more conscious and careful about how much I swing through the ball because this paddle can really launch the ball. This is a paddle that is going to be absolutely terrifying in the hands of an experienced singles player. I think where this paddle lacks in forgiveness and softness, it makes up for it tenfold in the sheer power and spin this can do. Here are some thoughts Dylan had from his first impressions.
I really like the 06. It's pretty different than the 02 and the earlier Labs. The carbon fiber felt really nice. One thing I noticed was that it was relatively stiffer than a lot of the other carbon fiber paddles, such that you feel like the ball is really coming off with some force and your counters are much stronger, so it's not like the ball is staying on the paddle for a long time. The spin was a huge part of this paddle, I felt, especially I play with the Labs too. The spin is a huge upgrade. You can really shape the ball, so it's really good in singles. Resets felt really nice as well, so I felt like, give a good touch to the ball. The only thing is that it's a bit heavy, that's one thing, and the handle is pretty long, so I think a lot of the weight is here. So what benefit I noticed from the weight being at the tip of the paddle is that you can roll the ball really nicely with your backhand and your forehand, so you get really good power and spin with that roll. And the only thing that's a downfall is that with the hands felt a little slower just because the weight is mostly at the top, it felt to me. Overall, it's very high-end, really nice paddle, I thought. I'm going to talk about the comparison between my current paddle and the Project 06. I like this paddle a lot, has a ton of pop, everyone knows that. The thing is, when you hit on the edges of this paddle, often the ball kind of dies. There's a lot of mishits with this, which I think comes with the power. However, with this paddle, I think with carbon fiber paddles, especially that are thermoformed, like this one is, when you hit the edges, I felt a lot better than I do with the 02. I felt like I have a lot more control getting into the kitchen, transitioning through the transition zone, and you can also rely on the spin a lot for that control, because I can cut the ball, I could spin it such that I can give myself a higher margin over the net, but the ball is going to drop because I put so much spin. Other comparisons, I like the handle a lot more with the 02. It's a bit shorter and I feel like I can really get closer to the paddle and have more maneuverability. It's also way lighter, so I feel like with those hands paddles, I can just maneuver this so much easier, whereas doing the same thing with this just feels a little bit harder. It's just a bit heavier.
Yeah, I feel like that makes a lot of sense what you're saying about coming from the Labs 2. If you're coming from a paddle that's already really thin, it's long, it's maybe already elongated, then I think the Lab 6 is going to be like, whoa, this is a big upgrade because you're already using a paddle that's already kind of lower margin. But if you're coming from, like me, if you're coming from a paddle like the Halo Max, where you're used to a paddle that's already like quite large, this is going to be an adjustment. Different players will say different things about it. People might say like, oh, tons of mishits, oh, so good. It just kind of depends on where you're coming from and what you're already used to. Don't drop that. I'm coming from a paddle that is very forgiving, but what I really love about this is even though it's a smaller surface area, it hits so much harder, and I think that is one trade-off that is going to benefit a lot of people. Alright, so we hope you enjoyed this review. Let us know in the comments if we missed anything, if there's anything else you want to learn about the paddle. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll be reviewing the Lab 005 next, which is also a very good paddle. I have tons to say about that. So we'll see you next time.